It's a Christmas-time mystery that goes back 50 years. On this day in 1974, 3 girls went to a Fort Worth shopping mall for some last-minute shopping, and they never returned home. Today, it's one of Texas' most baffling unsolved mysteries.
It was December 23rd, 1974. 3 young Fort Worth girls were doing some last-minute Christmas shopping here at the Seminary South Shopping Center. That was the last time they were seen or heard from.
On December 23, 1974, 3 teenage girls left their homes in Fort Worth, Texas, to go Christmas shopping. They were excited, dressed casually, and expected to be home in time for dinner. None of them packed a bag. None of them said goodbye like it was the last time, and none of them ever came back. The only trace they left behind was a single phone call, calm, ordinary, and chilling in hindsight. It was the last time anyone ever heard their voices. Fort Worth, Texas, Christmas week, 1974. Fort Worth in the mid-1970s was a growing Texas city, busy but familiar. The days leading up to Christmas were filled with shoppers, decorations, and crowded parking lots. On December 23rd, just 2 days before Christmas, Seminary South Shopping Center was packed with last-minute buyers. That afternoon, 3 girls planned what seemed like a harmless trip to the mall. There was nothing unusual about it. In fact, it was so ordinary that no one thought twice. The girls were Trlica, age 17, Julie Moseley, age 9, and Renee Wilson, age 14. Rachel was the oldest and the driver. She had recently married and was considered responsible and reliable. Renee was quiet and thoughtful. Julie, the youngest, was energetic and trusting. Together, they represented 3 different ages, personalities, and stages of life, which is exactly why what happened next would haunt Fort Worth for decades. Who were the girls? Rachel Trlica was newly married and known as dependable. Her family trusted her judgment completely. When she told her husband she was taking Renee and Julie to the mall, no one questioned it. She had plans later that evening and promised to be back by 6 p.m. Renee Wilson was a close friend of Rachel's and had been invited along for the shopping trip. She was described as shy and kind, not the type to wander off or take risks. Julie Moseley was only 9 years old. She begged to come along, and her family agreed because Rachel was going. Julie's presence is one of the most disturbing aspects of the case because it meant this was not a spontaneous disappearance, but one involving a child who trusted the people around her. None of the girls had a history of running away. None of them had expressed fear or concern that day. The trip to Seminary South Mall. The girls left home in Rachel's car sometime in the early afternoon. Seminary South Mall was a popular shopping destination, especially during the holidays, where stores were crowded and the parking lot was full. At some point after arriving, Rachel placed a phone call. She called her husband. The call was brief and unremarkable on the surface. Rachel said they were running a little late and would be home later than planned. There was no sign of distress in her voice, no panic, no coded message, just an update. That phone call would become one of the most analyzed moments in the entire case because it was the last confirmed contact with any of the 3 girls. When they didn't come home. As evening arrived and the girls failed to return, concern quickly turned into fear. Rachel missing her planned dinner was unlike her. As the hours passed, families began calling hospitals, friends, and eventually the police. By that night, all 3 girls were officially reported missing. What made the situation more alarming was how fast the disappearance happened. There were no witnesses who remembered seeing the girls leave together. No security footage existed that could show what happened. And no one remembered anything unusual. Despite the mall being crowded, it was as if the girls had simply vanished into thin air. The car that should have been there. The next day, investigators made a critical discovery. Rachel's car was found parked at Seminary South Mall. It was locked. The gifts and purchases the girls had bought were still inside. There were no signs of a struggle, no broken windows, no blood. Nothing suggested a violent confrontation near the vehicle. This discovery shifted the case from a possible misunderstanding to something far more serious. The girls had made it to the mall. They had shopped. And then, at some point, something interrupted their plans. Investigators now had to answer a terrifying question. How do 3 girls disappear from a crowded mall in the middle of the day without anyone noticing? Early theories and immediate confusion. In the first days of the investigation, police considered several possibilities. Could the girls have met someone they knew? Were they abducted by force? Did someone pose as an authority figure or offer help? The presence of a 9-year-old ruled out many runaway theories almost immediately. Julie did not have the independence or motive to disappear voluntarily.
My friends called us this morning and asked me if we'd heard about it on the news, and I told them no. So then we called down here and they told us we could come look at them.
What happened when you looked at the clothing?
They're not Renee's. They're not Julie's, I know. And Renee doesn't have anything like that, and they're bigger. And Renee didn't have anything that color of green, like the panties were.
And Rachel, being married and responsible, had no reason to abandon her life. Theories began to lean toward foul play, but without evidence, investigators struggled to determine when or how it occurred. Witnesses who remembered nothing. One of the most disturbing elements of the case was the lack of witnesses. Despite the mall being crowded, no one could definitively say they saw the girls being approached, followed, or taken. Some people later claimed vague memories, a group of girls talking to a man, or someone offering directions. But none of these accounts could be verified. There were no confirmed sightings of the girls leaving the mall together or separately. No one remembered hearing screams. No one noticed a struggle. The disappearance was quiet, fast, and clean. A case that refused to make sense. Within days, the Fort Worth missing trio became a local and then national mystery. Newspapers covered the story extensively. Flyers were distributed. Families begged for information. But leads went nowhere. There was no ransom demand, no suspicious phone calls, no confirmed sightings outside the mall. The single phone call Rachel made earlier that day stood as the last known proof that everything had been normal. And that normality is what made the case so unsettling. 3 girls walked into a mall. They never walked out. The silence after the call. By the end of December 1974, hope began to fade. Christmas passed. Then New Year's, and still there were no answers. The Fort Worth missing trio had vanished, leaving behind a locked car, untouched gifts, and one ordinary phone call that would echo for decades. The investigation begins to fracture. As days turned into weeks after the disappearance of Rachel Trlica, Renee Wilson, and Julie Moseley, the investigation began to lose momentum. Fort Worth police were under pressure, but they were also working with almost nothing. There was no crime scene in the traditional sense. The mall parking lot showed no signs of violence. The car offered no forensic clues, and the only confirmed communication, Rachel's phone call, contained no hint of distress. Investigators initially treated the case as a possible runaway situation, a decision that would later be heavily criticized. While this approach was not uncommon in the 1970s, it delayed the urgency the case may have needed in its earliest hours. The families strongly disagreed with the assumption. They insisted that none of the girls would have left willingly, especially with a 9-year-old involved.
Well, 9 days ago, I thought maybe they had just went somewhere, but now I don't believe they have. I believe they've been picked up.
By the time law enforcement fully committed to the idea of abduction, valuable time had already been lost. The phone call that haunts the case. The phone call Rachel made to her husband remains one of the most chilling aspects of the case. It was placed from the mall and was entirely calm. Rachel simply said they would be home later than planned. Nothing in her tone suggested fear or coercion. Some investigators later theorized that the call may not have been as innocent as it sounded. One idea suggests Rachel could have been instructed to make the call to avoid raising suspicion. Another theory proposes that she sensed something was wrong but did not realize the danger she was in. Because the call was so normal, it provided no clear direction for investigators. Instead of clarifying events, it deepened the mystery. Witness sightings and conflicting statements. Over time, witnesses began to come forward with fragmented memories. Some claimed to have seen 3 girls speaking with a man near the parking lot. Others mentioned a green pickup truck. A few said they saw the girls being led away by someone who appeared authoritative. None of these accounts could be verified. The lack of consistency among witness statements made it impossible to establish a timeline. No one could confirm whether the girls left together, were separated, or were approached by more than one individual. What disturbed investigators most was that the mall was crowded. The idea that 3 girls, one of them a child, could be taken without drawing attention seemed almost impossible. Yet that was exactly what appeared to have happened. Suspects and persons of interest. Over the years, several suspects have been considered, questioned, or quietly dismissed. Some were known offenders in the area. Others were individuals later arrested for unrelated crimes who claimed knowledge of the case. One recurring figure in discussions surrounding the Fort Worth missing trio is a man who was later convicted of violent crimes and allegedly confessed to involvement. However, these confessions were inconsistent, and no physical evidence ever connected him to the girls. Another theory suggested involvement by more than one perpetrator, possibly someone who gained the girls' trust or presented himself as an authority figure. This could explain how the girls left without resistance or witnesses noticing anything unusual. Despite decades of speculation, no suspect has ever been officially charged. The most disturbing theory. Among all theories, one stands out as the most unsettling. Some investigators believe the girls may have been abducted by someone they did not perceive as a threat. Someone polite, calm, and convincing. In the 1970s, public awareness of stranger danger was limited, and trust in authority figures was high. If the girls believed they were simply being helped or redirected, there would have been no reason to resist or draw attention. This theory aligns with the complete absence of chaos or struggle. It also explains why the disappearance happened so quickly and quietly. The families fight for answers. While public interest faded over time, the families never stopped searching.
And for the last 48 years, I just wanted to find my sister.
They organized awareness campaigns, spoke to media outlets, and repeatedly urged law enforcement to reopen and re-examine the case. Rachel Trlica's family in particular, pushed back against early assumptions that she may have run away.
I don't think my sister wrote that note.
They emphasized her new marriage, her plans for the future, and her responsibility toward Julie. The families were left not only with grief, but with unanswered questions, and the feeling that the case had slipped through the cracks of a flawed system. Cases like this remain unsolved not because people forget, but because answers are still missing. If this story stayed with you, share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice keeps these stories alive. Like the video and subscribe to the channel for more true cases that deserve to be remembered.